library. So, and we hope to do that with all the book club meetings. Everybody's busy, and if you can make it, please come. We meet every other month on the third Saturday. So the third Saturday of March, the third Saturday of May, July, September, and November for 2019. Other housekeeping stuff. I just wanted to introduce you the committee that kind of oversees the Carlos Bulosan Book Club, and that's myself as the chair, James Castillo here, who is our tech person, Vicky Perez, and Jocelyn Jocelyn, are you here? Oh, there you are. So, those are some of the housekeeping
and you
items.
are, sir?
Oh, I said myself as the chair of the committee.
Your name.
Oh, Jaime Guiaga. My name is Jaime Guiaga. I've been doing this Carlos Bulosan Book Club now. We're starting our third year. We started it in 2017. And so, hope everybody is enjoying the programming that we've developed for it. So, with that said, I'd like to proceed to to introduce our guest speaker for today, and that is Eliseo Art Silva. My main introduction to him was the mural at Unidad Park, and when I first saw it, or when I first even heard about it, I was really impressed, not only with the vibrant colors, but also, more importantly, the images that were depicted in there. It clearly reflected at least the Filipino-American community that I know. And that was maybe 20 years ago, just his name and the Unidad part. And I think more recently, I didn't realize how prolific all the different art that he's done. When I was able to visit the website, I said, wow. So anyway, so I did a little bit of research on him. In fact, I first talked to him back in June of 2018 to develop a logo for the Carlos Bulosan Book Club, which he gladly accepted. And I got to start to know him. So I said, we'll have to do a podcast on you at some point. And I think we initially scheduled it for November, but Eliseo is very busy. And so I think finally we have him, and we have him as a guest speaker today. He grew up pretty much in the Philippines, and I think at the age of 17 moved to the US. Not so much about he wanted to move. I think it was his family forced him to move, but he'll talk more about that. And I think I've asked Eliseo.
Not forced.
I asked Eliseo to talk about his art and how that has evolved, and whether that has any relation to his own experience, both growing up in the Philippines and eventually moving to the United States. So I wanted to hear. I said, I want you to share with the book club and other people who will see this podcast your story and how that's connected to your art. So hopefully he will do that. But I said this is an ongoing process. And we want to hear you articulate at this point in time how your art relates to you evolving as an artist and to your notion, perspective of Philippine history as well as Filipino-American history and experience here in the U.S. because you have that both. You straddle both of that world. So anyway, without further ado, I guess I'll make announcements later about the book club and the friends at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Eliseo Art Silva.
Oh, okay. So actually I have an activity to start the whole thing because it kind of like makes the message clearer if I do some kind of mixer. And actually underneath your chairs, my wonderful sister here helped me put it together, are something underneath. And I want you to pull it out, take it out of the plastic bag and look at it and see what it is. After this, you put it back on the table if you could, just on that side. But take it out of the bag. And there's only one question. What special memory does it elicit for you? What special memory? Yeah, you can take it out of the bag and hold it. So you know what it is? It's actually very fragile. It's like some kind of figurine, like made of porcelain. But it's okay, if you break it or anything. It's just be careful.
It's okay if you bring it home.
Nah. So yeah. So the question is, what special memory does it elicit for you? Like the first thing that comes to your mind, And if you could get like 1 or 2 volunteers to kind of give us a little bit of a story. Tell a story from the object. Okay. Thank you. What's your name?
Okay, my name is Amanda Bueno.
And you're from?
I live in Echo Park.
Oh wow, local. Okay.
Yeah, I'm local. So, hi. Very happy to be here. In my other life, I was teaching community development at the University of the Philippines. And we brought our students to Sariaya, Quezon. So the community became the classroom. So I was one of the 2 faculty members who would stay with our students, and we would be in the community for about 10 days, and then we go back to Quezon City for 4 days, and then we go back again to the community. So Pahiyas is what I got, and it reminds me of that one opportunity that we had to participate in this fiesta in Quezon. I believe Pahiyas is a fiesta in Lukban.
Yeah.
Right?
Bye.
So along with my other co-faculty, her name is Luz, and with our students, we decided to, join the fiesta in Lukban called Pahiyas. And I was so, that was my first time actually to join the Pahiyas festival in Lukban. And I was so impressed with how it was organized. Every house would have this colorful, I forgot the local name, it's made of rice.
Yeah.
They would color it with vibrant colors as...
Shaped as leaves.
It's shaped as leaves, correct,
They're
yeah.
shaped like leaves.
And they would decorate their homes with these leaves bursting with colors. So I was just so impressed with their dedication, with their commitment to make sure that their homes would look really, alive and would look really colorful and ready to celebrate the festival. I don't remember which saint they are celebrating, because in the Philippines, when you have fiestas, you actually associate fiestas with saints. Now, forgive me, but I don't remember which saint the festival is associated with. Number 2, the second thing that really impressed me with this festival is every house would has some food. So they would invite everybody, whether they know the people or not. You can go up a house, or you can go into a house and eat. So it felt to me like I was experiencing the generosity and openness of Filipinos, which are the two things that would characterize, I would say, our people. We're generous, we're open, and we don't hesitate to, have strangers partake of the food. And so I would say it was a very positive experience. I wish I can go back again to Lukban, Quezon and experience, the spirit of giving, the spirit of generosity, the spirit of celebration. Because when I was there, I was just feeling positive, and although we did not know anybody there, to be honest, we did not know any family in Lukban, but we just felt like, we were received with a lot of grace and warmth and hospitality. So thank you that this is this is what I got, because it reminded me of that very positive experience. Thank you.
Probably you could leave it here, yeah. Talk about it. Thank you. Amanda, is that your name?
Yes.
Thank you so much. You're a professor?
Yeah, I was teaching at UP for 6 years before I came to the US.
What subject were you teaching?
Community development.
Oh, okay. So what used to be just a simple figurine, you can never forget anymore because of the story, right? It's no longer an object. It actually came alive. So in a little way, this is exactly what I'm trying to impart in my presentation. Telling our stories gives value to the object, and our stories gives it more, what do you call it? Gives it memory. It kind of elicits memories and all that. Okay, so it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share my journey and the story of the mural, because whatever's out there, I'm not happy with. Some schools have already included the mural in their academic programming, but the scholarship is very flawed, and it's actually really, really, really bad. That's why I decided that I should do my part in telling the story of the mural. And this is the first step, the podcast. But I'm hoping I'm gonna get this book written, and through your help and my sister and other people, I'll be able to make it the right book for the community. Because this is something that is my responsibility before I go back. And I'm not retiring. For me, it's this is really my life that I wanted, going back to the Philippines. Because as mentioned earlier, it wasn't part of my plan. My projection was already in the Philippines. But it was our parents' decision to move. So anyway,
Eliseo,
yes.
your name, you have 3 names.
Oh,
How,
Eliseo Art Silva
is there
is my
any
name.
special meaning?
Eliseo is my grandfather's name. Art is my dad's name, and I'm the oldest. It's usually a tradition of the oldest to carry the grandfather and the father's name. So the cover kind of shows you a unfinished portion of Carlos Bulosan Memorial in Seattle, and you can see some of the farm worker leaders from Pablo Manlapit in Hawaii. Do you guys recognize any of these?
Yes.
Who's the one next to Pablo Manlapit? On the right of Pablo Manlapit. This one.
Is that Carlos Bulosan?
No, that's Chris Mansalvas. He's the hero of Bulosan in America's in the Heart. Of course, there's Larry Leong.
Okay.
So these are 3 Delano Manons, Pete Velasco and Philip Vera Cruz. Okay, let me read my script because we don't have a lot of time here. Okay, so like Carlos Bulosan, I was 17 when I immigrated to the United States. And like Bulosan, I remained a citizen of the Republic of the Philippines. Reason why I decided to stay a bit longer to tell the Filipino story in Bulosan's America. These are the things I'm going to cover. And I will also cover 2 memorials to Filipino Americans. The one in Unidad Park was meant to be Larry Leong's memorial. But because at the time nobody knows who he was, I would not have won the competition if it was Larry Leong's name, the title.
Right.
And the second memorial is the Carlos Bulosan Memorial in Seattle. So those are the two memorials that I'm going to be leaving behind. And then there's two more memorials, so there's four. The first two is Philippine American, the other two is Philippine. So the first one is the Philippine Nationality Room in Pittsburgh. It's an 18th century Philippine classroom. And the other one is a tribute to the Filipino masters, Damian Domingo, Jose Lozano, Juan Luna, and Simon Flores. I'm currently working on that right now for the Mabuhay Bank in Carson, because that's one of the things that I thought was missing in America. There's no Filipino masters in the museums. So I'm recreating their masterpieces, but recasting it into my own style, so that Filipinos could walk in that bank and know that there's Filipino masters in the Philippines. Okay, so first slide. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to get that. Oh, page. Oh, can we dim the light? Is it dim the light?
That's it, that's it.
Okay, it's not working. There you go. Okay, so that's me. You see my picture at the bottom. And this is kind of like, so kind of my world when I was a child. You know, there's a lot of things are not taught in the schools in the Philippines, and Golden Ages is not something we're taught in the Philippines. But I didn't realize that I was surrounded by it. And in my own hometown is this tropical palace. It recreates a Filipino palace, like Lapu-Lapu's palace. And our idea of pre-colonial Philippines is what? Bahay Kubo, right? But here's a Filipino palace. And I didn't realize it then, but we were not even taught in our school in the first chapter of our Philippine history books that the Filipinos lived in palatial homes, right? So that's one thing. And then the bottom, pointer, sorry, I'm not using this one. This is my grade school. It's called the Benedictine Abbey School. Now it's called San Beda College, Alabang. And the classrooms are circular. And they're like dot eyes, you know, the circular classroom. They don't have walls. And each classroom goes straight to each other. So when I was growing up, I was a popular artist because I would draw the presentation visuals for the teachers. So that was my first mural as a chalkboard art. And you know, this idea of circular classroom is the same idea by Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Yeah, so we're learning by doing. And in that, the students are co-creator of knowledge. What that means is the story of the children is the determining factor for arriving at the truth or the theme or the lesson, right? So so that's kind of like recreating the pre-colonial Philippines indirectly as a child, the first golden age. And then the second one is Intramuros. Letran, I went to Letran for my grade 6, and it's the only educational building that's still standing. The same floors, classrooms that Quezon, Aguinaldo, and our great Filipinos studied in, it's still there. So actually I just got a call this morning from my school. They want me to do a mural for their 400th anniversary. So that's really like a dream for me because I could do a mural going back to the Philippines. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go straight to the paintings here. This is one of my first ones. It's done with a photograph. I was 12 years old, and I sold this right away when they displayed the bakery in our business. This is my first political mural after the Ninoy was shot. Our father informed that pinatay si Ninoy. We all kind of like, who's that? You know, we thought it was some kind of uncle. He was just shot at the airport. because it was the opening of our restaurant, and it was like around noontime we were going to open the restaurant, and something snapped inside when he told us the news. So it was like the first time I felt part of like being Filipino, like everybody felt the same. Something snapped, you know? Like something's gonna happen, whatever happens. And so that was my first kind of like connection to like a larger idea of being Filipino. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this was a mural I did when I was at the High School for the Arts. And I was commissioned to do the mural for the school. So it's my first commission at 15 years old. You can already see some traces of the mural in Unidad here, right? Sort of the triangle composition. Okay, so in high school I went to this Philippine High School for the Arts. This is kind of what set my trajectory. It's like I never really had a lot of time with my own family because we were really kind of like placed here. We all lived here in the mountain. And so we were like kind of like trained and set to like change the Philippines with our work, right? And so that's why when we heard the news that we were gonna leave, like within three weeks or something, I was just really shocked, you know, like because I already had a scholarship to any school I want in the Philippines. It was part of my award. And anyway, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. But that was my final project. It's a jeepney, and I painted and cut the whole thing in plywood. So it's a requirement for every student to leave a piece of work. That was mine. The one on the left, one in India for the gold medal. So all of us represented the Philippines. It's the Madonna of the Lanzones, because it's like a local fruit, you know, in Laguna, the Lanzones. Sorry, let me, can you get water? Oh, there's water. Okay, so coming to America, these are the businesses that we had. I was telling my sister, because our cousin that's passed a few days ago, this was him, our Kuya Ernie. He was a folk singer. And this side of our restaurant in BF was the first nightlife in BF Homes Parañaque. Now it's known for its nightlife, but that was our restaurant. That's my mom, and this is our bakery. So I don't know if you can see here, but there's like brown paper cut into squares, and we use that as a bag for the pandesal. We would use rice as glue. But that's where I draw my first artwork while I was a kid. You know, while waiting for customers, I would draw next to my mom. And we get orders from like life's great artists. They would deliver it to the bakery, so I'd read art books in the bakery. This is where it all started. And this is like another restaurant we had. We had like 2 bakeries and 2 restaurants. And I did a mural when I was like 10 years old. And this is a portion of it. It's hard to see, but it's called King's Delight. So there's a king with like, subjects behind him. And then that's the whole thing is arcade at our family home. And that's Archie Bell's Boutique. This was our movie theater, right there. BF Homes. Yeah. And then this is where we gathered when we went to the EDSA Revolution. This was a pickup place.
Town was this again?
Huh?
Somebody's asking where is it? What town?
BF Homes, Parañaque.
Parañaque,
BF, Banco Filipino Homes.
BF.
Yeah, phase 1. Yeah, Aguirre Avenue. And this is a little bit later when I came back before the Marcos bus was destroyed. That's right there. Okay, so I'm just gonna go quickly. This was like so the story was, let me just read this so I won't forget. We never said goodbye to all of that. So that was for me like some kind of closure did not happen. I felt like, you know, I was traumatized, you know. Our sudden departure affected me the most because my trajectory was set for the Philippines. I was being the oldest, was the only one who finished high school. And most people said the college life in the Philippines was the most memorable, and I missed that. It's like it was taken away from me. So that was part of what was going on with me coming to America, right? So when we came here, our father said, let's do what the Romans do, you know? We're not gonna have family dinners anymore, you know? And even the disciplining, with no more palo, no more, you know, like the discipline with the slippers, the belt. We were all disciplined in the Philippines. But here, he took all of that out. So as the eldest, you know, it's an automatic for the oldest to look out for the younger ones, right? And we never bonded really well because there was no more family dinners. And you know, that's fine if our parents want that, but I guess they have to like be balanced to those who are also born in America and born in the Philippines. But that didn't happen. So it was kind of like it kind of like became dysfunctional on my point of view, you know. So I felt like from that point up to today, I'm being pushed out, you know, because of the fact that I had a certain trajectory and everybody had a certain trajectory. Not that I regretted coming to America, but it wasn't cushioned. It wasn't, there was no process, there was no closure, there was no adjustment. And because the two young ones were not disciplined, I became the villain, you know? So I became like that. And it actually was the reason why I almost died because of depression. January 10, 2016, I had a 40/30 blood pressure. And God saved me. And I know God loves me because He wants me to complete what I need to do, right? But anyway, so my first paintings were not Filipino at all. My dad told me, don't do anything Filipino in America. So this is what I did, you know. Actually, before I came to America, I told him if I get accepted at Art Center, that I will go. I mean, you know, but I just said that, and I did apply. I got in, but in Pasadena, it was so expensive, you know. We can't afford the non-resident fee for the housing. So I had to go to community college. So I went to community college, Riverside Community College. Actually, has one of the best art programs in the country. So, okay. So this book gave me hope. Resolved by Austin Coates. The reason, well, you know, in 1990, I went to the library of Riverside, the main library. I looked for everything they have about the Philippines. Because I'm like, why don't they know about anything about the Philippines? They think I'm Mexican, I'm Chinese, you know, whenever I meet classmates. You know, what are Filipinos? You know, like they have no idea. So I looked for all the books. This is the book I never even seen in the Philippines. It changed my life because I realized that that is the Filipino story. What we've been given in the Philippines is the American story. And the reason we're invisible is we keep telling the American story. What is the American story? It's designed for us, it's designed for the Philippines to be rid of Filipinos so that they could just leave and become workers and assimilate to American culture, blend in and stand out. That's basically the American story. That is the goal of the American story. That's why a lot of us are invisible because we keep telling American stories, not Filipino stories. I'm going to explain that later a little bit if I have time here. Because you know our story, it kind of like, for example, when I went to the mayor of Calambay early this year because I told him going back to the Philippines. I said I'm going to teach young people to do Filipino art. And he said, oh, you're going to paint Bahay Kubos. So the idea of Filipino story ends in the Bahay Kubo. And that is not the Filipino story. That is the American story. Because they want to convince us that anything that before Americans came is not good. You know, so that makes us disappear and makes them the event, the main event. So the artwork there is my self-portrait. So, you know, something about Rizal, he said that a true concept of oneself drives nations to do great things. That's where it started. When I read this book, it's the first time I saw Rizal connected to Gandhi, connected to the idea that he wanted the Philippines independent, that he went to Cuba because he wanted to study it, because he wanted Cuba to be an alliance to the revolution. He was right, because Cuba could have been a lobbying power to US Congress and helped us free our country. Okay, so these are kind of like, I just wanted to show the last two paintings I did for Otis before I start with the earlier ones. Because at the end of my program, they told me, Eliseo, you keep painting these Filipino things, nobody understands it. He told me in art school at Otis. He said, unless you paint maids and houseboys, no one's gonna get it as Filipino. So I was really offended by that, you know, and I just threw it back at them, right? Because they don't know anything about the Philippines. Like, all they think is that we're just houseboys or maids. I don't even know what houseboy was. I have to look it up. What is a houseboy, right? So anyway, this was like the end result of my program, but before that I was doing this. Next slide. Okay, so this is my second year program. This was after the riots. So I did something about colonial mentality, and as a gateway to mental illness, depression, all kinds of, you know, darkness and all that. And also the plastic surgery, where you pintados over there on the left side, how technology is like taking over or nature. So this is my second year program at Otis. This was kind of like my third year before I went and get the internship, Fishes of Men. So that program made me focus in exploring possibilities of creating truth from layers and a multiplicity of perspectives. I also was interested in surface projection, which liberates the images from its flatness and singular dimensionality. Now, the idea about detour to the land of Carlos Bulosan, Philippines has always been my destination, and USA is and always will be a detour. And only after I discovered the America that Carlos Bulosan wrote about in his works, which transformed the American landscape, did I feel some kind of trajectory here, because my trajectory used to be in the Philippines. But discovering Bulosan made me find a way to, you know, to reclaim the intensity that I was striving for. Because that's what artists do. They try to reclaim the intensity they find in the world and in nature into art, right? And only when I saw Bulosan and read about him did I find the hope that I could do it here. Okay. So I'm gonna go through the journey to the mural. So after all that work before this, those were the works that got me the internship to Getty. And as I mentioned before, the riots happened a little bit earlier than that. The riots was actually kind of like an incubator for a lot of good things for the community. One of them is the Getty internship. We were the second batch of graduates from the program. And I was assigned at Spark. And Spark main signature work is the Great Wall of LA. It's 3,000 feet long. That shows the entire history of California. But there were no Filipinos in it, except for one diver, Victoria Graves, with not even in the flag of nations. And so I was so pissed. I was asked to be apprenticed. There's three artists There's one from Otis, which is me. There's an Irvine artist, UC Irvine, and then another one from UCLA. The three of us worked with Judy Baca to restore this at that time. And what I did was I tagged it. The original, this is the part where they talk about the immigrants coming to California. This flag was all China. See, it's all red. And then I cut it in half. So China is that small little vertical red there. And that's the Philippine flag. Because that's the only place I could put the Philippine flag. So actually in successive restorations, they kept it. But there was no Philippine flag before that. That was my first tag. And so...
But you put the flag upside down.
No, it's not. It's that's blue and red. Blue over red. No, that's blue on the top, red on the bottom. It's not a good slide, you know. But that's the flag. And then, so when as an intern, I was the coordinator. So I worked on 3 murals with Judy, and I was also asked to coordinate the Filipino mural. And my task was to find someone to collaborate with, which is SIPA, and then a wall. This is one of 2 walls. The other wall is the one that used to be, you know, the big wall next to Tommy's. Like there's Tommy's Burgers, and then there's like a building. There's like big wall, right? You know, like all the way up. That wall was the second wall. That would have been it's either this or that wall. So this was chosen because it was SIPA's community garden. So that's the other reason why the riots helped, because the community garden is a product of the riots. It was a greening program that came on the riots, you know, the Rodney King riots. Okay. So there was a competition, and it came down to 2 finalists. But before the finalists was chosen, when the competition was advertised statewide and nationwide. There were like 25 artists that sent slides. And when Spark saw it, they say your work is better than this. They told me to put in my slide, even though I'm the one coordinating it, right? They said it's okay because the jurors are not Spark. The jurors are from the neighborhoods. Because, you know, that year they did 50 murals. Each neighborhood has a juror. Ours was Steffi San Buenaventura from UCR. She was our juror for the Filipino community. So she and 14 other jurors chose the final 2 artists for each neighborhood. So I got in. I was surprised, you know, because I wasn't expecting it. But they said, "We like your work." So the other artist is a team, Mexican and Filipina. That's Christina Mullen, and I forgot the name of the guy anymore. But this was their design. See, we were only going to pay $5,000, right? So they did not design for the whole wall. This is probably just not even half of it. This is probably a third of it. But there's no Larry Itliong. It's all Philip Veracruz. See? And it's Makibaka right there. And Gabriela Silang on the left, and the workers on the right. And I petitioned for the entire wall for $5,000, right? So anyway, that was the community voting. This was one of the meetings. It's not the final one, because the final one there were 30 voting. And it came down to 15 in favor of my design, 15 for the other design. So it was divided in half. And that's Helen Brown. You can see where Helen Brown is? Yeah, and the table has the design for the other group.
And she's wearing red.
Yeah, and then this is the Spark representative.
Oh, I thought it was Vicky.
No.
Yeah, so this is like them talking about the other design. Okay, so when I did my design, I really studied the site. And the other side of the wall, which is now the Lego mural, was Faustino's mural. It still has, it was, the lotus flower was still there. Faces of the faces were still there. So I knew it was about blending in and standing out. So that's going to be my theme, blending in and standing out. You know, the clustered figures are about blending in. The young man standing out, that's me, you know. That's me trying to stand out. And so that was the theme that I did for our own mural.
But this was the same location?
No, this was the other side where the Lego mural is now painted.
Oh, the Lego, yeah.
The Lego mural, which actually when they painted it, they also designed it so it also talks to my work. So see, we're like 3 generations, 20 years apart talking to each other. Because when they did the new mural, Christian told me exactly that they measured it so that where the baybayin is isang baksak, exactly where Larry Itliong is. So it's just totally, it's communicating to each other. So this is, oh, sorry. This is the process of painting it. Old school, It wasn't like paint by number, it was just like, fill it in and I do the detail. That's my brother Alan helping me paint the mural. Right there. This was the dedication. I only completed half of it after 4 months, because we only had 4 months to finish it. This is halfway. It was finished up to people power. The rest of it wasn't finished. It was just filled in. So it took me another 4 months. So it's a total of 8 months. And I found out that the Spolarium of Juan Luna took 8 months to finish. So I don't know what's the coincidence, right? But this took that much time. Okay, so this is how I explained it. When I first did, I know that I have to simplify it because I was at school. I still have to finish my thesis. I was graduating a month before the dedication. My graduation was May, and then June was the dedication. So I have to finish this along with finishing because my school did not accept this as my thesis, as my final project. So the first thing I said, okay, I'm just going to focus on one thing, that's the grape strike. So my main idea was this is really the mural. That's the mural. And I did not do Itliong as the main figure because I would not have won the vote because they don't like him at the time. They thought it was pro-Marcos. And then what I did was I put an angel on top of Itliong with a candle. So it's pointing straight to his head. So you know that I really intended him to be the main figure. And then I also made him 12 feet from the ground because he mastered 12 languages to be effective to the farm workers. He mastered 9 Philippine dialects, the major ones, Spanish, Chinese, and Japanese. So it's honoring him. Rizal is also, guess what? How many languages has he mastered? Rizal, anybody know?
5.
22. So he's 22 feet from the ground. So the 2 most important figures in the mural are elevated to the number of languages they mastered. And the way I see it, it increases their capability to tell stories. It increases their humanity. It's the complete opposite of being an object, right? And that is how they became heroes for our country, because I see the opposite of where we're at right now. The artists have to humanize us by telling stories, our stories. So that's basically the mural's message,
So why is Philip Veracruz this?
Well, okay, I used him as an anchor because most people doesn't know Filipino history and they think we're just Mexicans, right? So I made him look like Cesar Chavez. Most people that see this, they think he's Cesar Chavez. I actually manipulated the portrait so it looks like Cesar Chavez to somebody who doesn't know Philip Veracruz. If you put this next to a picture of Philip Veracruz, it doesn't look like that exactly. So that was a trick. That's also a way for it to shift. Because something I learned in art school was that art shouldn't be static. Because it's in the multiple perspectives that you create the intensity. And so what I did was, because they're seen as workers, meaning they're not human beings, they're objects, I humanized them by putting the bird and the fish behind them, see? That's how I simplified it. The fish is the Philippine part, the bird is the American part. See the bird? That's the entire design. So that's really like how I simplified it, even though it's really complex. And that came from the Sari Manok, see? The bird and the fish, the heavenly and terrestrial domain. So that's the entire mural. So basically it's really the grape stripe and then a background. The background just gives them context. See, that's what the book did to me, the Coasting Coats book. The book book I found in the library. It gave me context to Rizal and gave me context to our story. And that's what we need, the right context. And so here also I wanted to show that I disrupted the linearity of the mural by making Carlos Bulosan skip several generations ahead. So he's before Pancho Villa. Few people notice that, right? But because he defined the landscape, I made him go ahead. Because he's the one who, he said, I want the white American earth, right? Through his writing, he was able to tell the story, and this is not Bulosan's land, you know? So that's why, because Pancho Villa is in the 20s. The book was published in the 40s, right? Nobody notices that, right? But, so it's not really linear. It's kind of like linear, but it isn't. So it's shifting. The same way that this is shifting, because you think he's the most important guy, but he isn't. It's Larry Itliong. And you think that he's the most important, but he's actually behind Larry Itliong. And he's looking over Larry Itliong, right? It's like, I got your back, brother, right? And the son is like the central, so he's the most important figure. Okay. How much time do we have? We passed the time. Okay. Okay, East Coast. And search for the true America. When I first finished the Filipino mural, a lot of people told me, this is not Filipino American. To the point that they even told me, if you do Filipino American mural, don't put anything Filipino in it. We have nothing to do with the Philippines. Those are the criticisms that I got. So I was challenged to search for the true America. When I was in the Philippines growing up with Sesame Street, I thought all the houses were row houses. With like the steps and all that with where Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch comes out of the door. So I really wanted to see it for myself and go to the East Coast and paint a Filipino mural there. Anyway, so I got my MFA. I had a choice between Cornell University, they were going to give me like a free ride, plus 4,000 stipend, or MICA, which is in Baltimore. And because of the art program being better in MICA, I went to the Baltimore program. I don't regret it, but Cornell is good too, right? It's an Ivy League. But anyway, this is the first painting I did at the program. But that's my dad with me at in Baltimore with the. I think that's where the national flag, the national anthem was written in that fort somewhere. It was inspired in that site. Okay, so I thought I was going to stay there only for 3 years. Because, after the program is 3 years, I wanted to try and fill it because Jane Golden, who's the director of the mural program, invited me to do murals. And I said, okay, is it possible to do a Filipino mural? And said, let's see, is there any history of Filipinos here? There's no book, not even one. So I was forced to write a book, and that book is over there, the book. I had to write this book to do the mural. So it's one of the there's only 3 East Coast books on Arcadia, and that's one of the 3. And so the book opened it up for me because I was able to find descendants of like the original founders in 1912 of the Filipino Association of Philadelphia, Inc. They were founded in 1912, and they still existed continuously. So they're the oldest Filipino organization in the United States. Their Rizal Day started in 1912. They still do Rizal Day with a gala and dinner every end of the December. And they're the only one who does that. Because back then, that was the Independence Day. That was the National Day, Anyway, the mural is the first in the East Coast. So at least I was able to accomplish it. And I wanted to look that it wasn't done in the West Coast. That it's an East Coast mural. Oh my gosh, okay. Okay, so everything's about telling the Filipino story. Let me just wind down with okay, this is just some pictures of teaching, which I love. I taught for 7 years in Philadelphia through the school district. Okay, so Itliong became a key figure And the first Itliong Day was actually the completion of Unidad Park mural, because October 22, we invited people to come to celebrate the completion. It was really planned for the birthday, the Saturday before the birthday of Itliong. It was October 22. 24 is his birthday, right, or 25th. So the mural has become, this is the first celebration after the mural was completed. It took 20 years. And it took a Larry Itliong Day to do it.
And getting refunded. Finish it.
Okay, so I cannot get to this material anymore, huh? Anyway, let me just probably really quick. Okay. All right, so the story began because of the Spolarium. The Spolarium in 1884 won the gold medal, and the silver medal was won by this painting on the right. Christian virgins being exposed to the mob by Hidalgo. So the gold and silver medal went to Filipinos in Spain in 1884. And that was significant because we Filipinos were able to prove that we're equal, if not better, to our colonizers in art, right? Rizal took this opportunity to make a big statement, right? Rizal was 22 years old. He was asked to do the toasting speech. It was widely publicized. He said that our artists have laid the ground fertile for Filipino civilization to flourish. And their triumphs have rendered the Philippines and Spain as two equal states. So that was very radical. That is just like a Declaration of Independence. That's why the two scholars, Schumacher, Father John Schumacher and John Neri, are convinced that Rizal was a separatist the moment he wrote, during the time he was writing Noli Me Tangere. When he did become a propagandist, it was just trying to exhaust all those means, but he was always a separatist. That's the Filipino story. The American story made him into an assimilationist, right? To justify their conquest. Let me just skip through this. Well, Noli Me Tangere actually is where the title Recuerdo came from. Recuerdos is chapter 8 of Rizal's Noli Me Tangere. It's the shortest chapter. It is when Rizal, through the character of Ibarra, went back from Cuba, and then he chanced upon the gardens of Intramuros and experienced some kind of vertigo, an inverted telescope where Europe and Manila converged and new things came out. But the whole thing was intense, that in that space of intensity he called it specter of comparisons. And that's really what art is, and what he intended the novel to do, is to become an incubator to tell our stories. You know, for us to advance, because he was so shocked, nothing has changed after all those years he went to Europe. Europe was advancing, but we're still static, and nothing was happening. It's because our stories were not converged and contextualized. You know, it was just the other people's stories that was going on. And that's something I wanted to show with the girl with camera. Because she is taking a picture, so you're now the object. And she's shifting the story of who's telling the story and who's being objectified. So, okay, this is like very quick, okay? Bahay Kubo versus palatial houses, right? American story and Filipino story, right? This is like really, this is a Tologan, and that's like that could have been the palace of Lapu-Lapu right there. This is in Quezon City. Next. Sorry. Next. Okay. Fort Santiago as the main narrative for Manila to attract tourists. So the villain is Spain, who killed Rizal, versus Manila galleons, where the Philippines connected continents and countries together. What will attract more tourists? Spain killing Rizal, or the Philippines as where the Manila galleon happened, our golden age, right? Why would tourists not go to the Philippines? Okay, this is the American story. Bonifacio and Rizal as the foremost heroes. Rizal being an assimilationist, Bonifacio being the worthy, noble hero to have defeated the Americans, but his enemy is only Spain, because he did not survive the Spanish era. So the enemy is only limited to the Spanish, whereas Aguinaldo in the American story is the villain. But he was the one who faced the Americans and gave us the republic, even though we cannot win it, just so we have a symbol to rally behind with as one people. So this is the Filipino story, and this part right here at the top, that is the right way to tell the story. Rizal next to Aguinaldo, right there. Okay, next. Sorry, it's taking too long, right? Okay, this is the last chapter. This is the house I'm gonna move in at the Arambulo house. My grand uncle is Claro Embrecto from my father's side, the senator. You can see it right in the top left. The bottom, from my mother's side, is one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. His name is Don Francisco Arambulo. And this is the Arambulo house in Calamba, Laguna. And nobody lives there except for 14 ghosts, diwatas. Anyway, this is where I plan to open up my studio and atelier and create a product of, what do you call it, recuerdo souvenirs. But, you know, something like this that equal to like a Chinese sculpture that you could display in your house, or something like this. I'll show. Like this. See these are Spanish collections of Philippine artifacts that we don't even know of. You see that bamboo container for tobacco? It's very detailed carving. And then there's silverware with coconut. Yeah, stuff like this. You know, it's very high quality Philippine artifacts that should be in our house so we could tell our story. So let me just wrap it up by saying that when we leave the country, we bring objects make us blend in. We leave everything that tells our story. As opposed to other cultures like Koreans or Chinese. They bring everything they treasure that tells their story. They don't leave it behind, right? So that's one of the reasons we're invisible. You go to a Filipino home, how many artifacts are there that tells Filipino stories? You know what I mean? And it's also because we don't know how to tell the story, right? So it comes down to that. How we tell our stories, and it's through our education. So thank you so much. I wish I had more time, but you know, I think this is enough for today. Thank you. Oh, Q&A.
Yeah, I'll
All right. I'll just try to see what's left of it, so I can remember. Oh, the Bulosan murals. These are some of the murals that has Bulosan in it. And then that's the classroom, and that's the mural for Carson. I'll just leave it at that. This is the work I'm doing right now, the Filipino Masters. Each one 6 by 6 feet. The bottom one is 6 by 12.
Where in Carson?
They're building a Mabuhay Credit Union.
Oh, they are.
So really,
It's a Filipino-American, the first Filipino-American bank. The money came from Japanese money because they don't. Huh? All right, sorry.
Anyway,
All right.
thank you, Eliseo.
Thank you.
I've seen your art online and on walls. So this, for me, gives so much context about your own development and portraying your experience as growing up in the Philippines and here in America. I'm sure this is a work in progress, and I would be so curious to hear your story in 10 years. So with that, I'd like to open it up for question and answers. People can make comments or ask questions directly.
Yeah, Eliseo, you're creating the Filipino visual language right here. You know, and I'm seeing all the progress that you've made from your early beginnings to now, and your work has really developed a lot.
Thank you.
And the rest of us who aren't Filipino, we need to learn what everything means.
Just the stories.
Yeah, and the stories, and get the stories out there. So please, you must continue your work.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Okay, any questions? There's some. Okay.
I'm just wondering about your reference in terms of Aguinaldo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because like Aguinaldo has been like cast as the villain of Philippine history, and the problem is that, and see, the core is our citizenship, and until we believe that had the Americans, even though it's not true, it's not realistic, if we believe that had the Americans not taken over the republic, if we believe that they are the right stewards, then we're always going to have colonial mentality. That's exactly what colonial mentality is. Not to believe that we could have done it. See, that generation is our greatest generation. I know not a lot of people believe that, but I believe it. Rizal's generation has like the multiple geniuses. They speak multiple languages. That was the greatest Filipino generation. Who else could steward us better than that generation? But we're not convinced that they could have done it without that they could have done a better job, because I believe we could have been a greater nation had the Americans not come. But the stumbling block is Aguinaldo, the discrediting of Aguinaldo, right? And of course, it's the idea that Bonifacio was killed by Aguinaldo, that Luna was killed by Aguinaldo, which is not true. The Consejo de Guerra that put the sentence of Bonifacio, there's a letter, right? And most people use that letter to say the admitted killing of Bonifacio. But if you read the letter, he only said that he had no power to change it. He preferred banishment, but the Consejo prevailed because he was a council. He cannot overrule the sentence. And the greatest proof is that he was able to convince our ancestors to volunteer to join his army. Nobody avenged his death. If he was really, imagine 29 years old, just that fact, think about it. Aguinaldo was 29 years old. He had no military training. He was a dropout from Letran, Why would I follow this guy? But imagine the intensity of the soldiers that stood behind him, facing the Americans. The Americans could have defeated us in 2 weeks. But it went on. And they had to resort to like desperate means. In fact, Amigos director, Silas, he said that he was so shocked at how many, I don't know what the numbers was, the cabeza de barangays that chose to be hung. Realistically, why would you hang yourself if you don't think Aguinaldo, if he was a villain, right? I mean, it's either the government that he's offering or the Americans.
So did America turn your George Washington
into
Benedict Arnold?
He made him into a villain. Of course, it's hard to understand military strategists, because he lived a long life, right? But you have to see it from a perspective of someone who's like a strategist. He was playing their game. He was playing the Americans' game. When he surrendered, he wrote a letter. He said, "This is the best I could do." If he was selfish, he would have had himself killed, right? But he wasn't. He willed himself long enough until the day Junto was restored. World War II, of course, that's very, very controversial, right? But the enemy for him was the Americans, not the Japanese. Because the Japanese was providing arms to the army against America. And the Filipinos fighting the Japanese, they had the American flag on their sleeves. He was not fighting Filipinos.
I think I'd like to bring it back to the Filipino story. And I think maybe Eliseo is catalyzing this discourse
Which is
as to what the Filipino story is. So, in his presentation, he says he finds hope in the Filipino-American story when he reads Carlos Bulosan. But by all means, that story is not complete, and I take it back to the Filipino story in the Philippines, which I think a lot of academics, intellectuals, activists probably will have to engage in that discourse to distill the quote-unquote Filipino story. So I kind of give a hand to Eliseo to
Yeah.
sparking that discussion.
Let me just say something, a short thing about it. All right. So basically, for me, the goal, like I said, artists are driven for intensity, right? What is the most intense story that could help our country, right? So for the Aguinaldo story, I think if we stand behind the Filipino story, which is for me June 12, Republic, the First Republic, the flag, that is the most intense part of our story. If we discredit that, it's not going to benefit us in the long term. The second is that how do we tell the story of the Philippines? Right now, if tourists go there, they go to the beach to have a tan. I mean, that's not a Filipino story. What is the most intense? Because when we did the Filipino room, we were figuring out what do we showcase as our achievements. It's 0 down to 2. The public school system during the Spanish era was like among the best in Asia because even Quezon was benefited from the public school system that reached to his province in Baler or Quezon or somewhere. I wasn't aware of it. The public school system was really extensive. I saw the what's his name? Fernando Shalcita sent us the documentation of how extensive the public school system was. And of course, the Manila Galleons. The Manila Galleons is really our most intense story that could draw the world to the Philippines. Because it was the first to connect continents and countries together. The problem is we think Spain is the villain. We were taught by America that Spain is the villain. They're all colonizers, but we had positive stories about what is the most intense part of our story that will benefit us in the long run. Is it that Rizal was killed by Spain? Why would the world flock to the Philippines just to see that? But that is the story we're telling in the Philippines, right? It should be the galleon trade. I mean, my dream is to have a galleon museum next to a real galleon, and then try to recreate Intramuros when it was part of the Orient Seas. And people will flock to the Philippines to see that story and understand that we were once the global center that we were. If you look at the paintings right there, look at the clothes they were wearing. Look at the left side. I mean, they were wearing like Chinese slippers, English, hats, and they're all over the world. This is the golden age, and I think. Okay, so.
Anyway, I think.
Philippine Heritage Collection.
Any more
Oh, yeah.
questions?
I
No more
think
questions.
you-
Oh, okay.
Maybe a couple more comments or questions, and then I'm gonna close the podcast.
Eliseo, could you speak briefly, of course, to the Eurasian swallow versus the Philippine eagle in comparison to your thesis of the American story versus the
What is that?
Filipino
The
story?
European what?
The Eurasian swallow is the national bird of the Philippines.
Philippine
while
eagle.
America was in charge of the Philippines. And after America left, that it became the Philippine eagle.
Oh, of course, yeah. Okay. Well, that's really about the symbols they choose. For example, when we depict Philippine Barrio Fiesta, like restaurants, it's also the Barrio Fiesta, right? Bahay Kubo, Maya Bird, all this like really like very, it's not as intense as the pre-Spanish ones, right? I mean, it could be intense, it's nostalgic, but the example is the Maya Bird. Maya Bird used to be our national symbol because the Americans said that's our national symbol. But now it's the Philippine eagle, right? So there's a big difference in terms of the stories being told because there's a certain effect that they want us to gravitate towards for those kinds of symbols. And they want us, a certain way. And you have to just think about, this debate about Bonifacio. Why would they build a monument to Bonifacio? Right? I mean, think about it. They built that monument in 1930s, 1921 when General Wood signed it was for a purpose. It's to shift the hatred from them and then make Aguinaldo look like a villain, and so that we won't even imagine that we could have done it without them. So the flag, we owe the flag to them, not to Aguinaldo anymore, because the flag came back when actually it was the Japanese Second Republic, right? They flew the flag again, but it looks like 1946 was really the highlight of our story. I came here with that story. Everybody thinks we were just MacArthur's little brown brother. That is our story. That shouldn't be our story. It should be Aguinaldo, a 29-year-old, going up against, the might of Spain and might of, and convincing our ancestors to volunteer. That is our story, right?
Okay, one more.
Actually, I was going to suggest maybe some of the conversation can continue online on the group or the club page.
Yeah.
Because I have so many questions, like when you're painting, who is your audience? Are you looking at Filipinos, at the U.S. audience? But there's so many other things around how colonial mentality has informed your painting, your topics, the feeling of alienation or being ripped from the Philippines to here, how
I have one sentence answer to that.
informed your
Yeah.
painting.
Okay.
on that.
Because I'm driven with intensity, the audience is always me. I'm always asking the question: where is the intensity in that, in what you asked me to do? Where the intensity is, where I'm drawn to, so I could reclaim that intensity. That is where I'm headed for.
That's good.
Okay, that's how I find the answers to this. That's why visual artists are an important part of our conversation as a community. And I'm just going to wrap it up with this because as I mentioned earlier, La Luna and Hidalgo's triumph started everything. It was the first Filipino in a global stage is the Filipino as an artist. But it was Rizal who gave it legs. And the same with Bulosan. Bulosan gave us legs, right? He gave us legs to walk on this land. That's what he gave me. He gave me those legs. I was the visual artist, but he was the one who gave me his legs. So we just build upon that. And that's what we owe Bulosan a lot for.
Well, again, I want to thank you, Eliseo, for coming here. I wanted to remind everybody that this Carlos Bulosan Book Club is a project of Friends of Echo Park Library here in Los Angeles. Echo Park Library is part of the Los Angeles Public Library System. Another project of the Friends of Echo Park Library is the Philippine Heritage Collection, which is located in this library. It has works by Filipino-American writers and authors. Again, I would like to encourage the community at large to come and visit us. You could also contact us on our website, Carlos Bulosan Podcast. Give us comments, and hopefully you can join us at one of our other meetings every other month on the third Saturday. And I think with that,
The books are available online at lapl.org.
the Philippine Heritage Collection books are also available online. So lapl.gov or .org. ORG. LAPL, Los Angeles Public Library.org. So with that, again, I want to thank everybody, and please join us again at our next Carlos Bulosan Book Club. Thank you.
Thank you.